Hi, my name is Jay Sugarman, and I want to welcome you to Museum Open House. This ongoing series features and highlights many of the outstanding museums and other cultural institutions. The main purpose of most programs is to inform viewers about current and upcoming exhibits, various programs, resources, and other opportunities that are available for the general public. Today, via Zoom, we're fortunate to have as our guests Lea Morgan and Molly Gambardella, both of whom are associated with the New England Botanic Garden at Tower Hill. Lea serves as the manager of exhibitions, and Molly is a highly accomplished multidisciplinary artist who primarily works in sculpture and installation. Lea and Molly are here today to inform us about the always much anticipated annual display of orchids, which is the focus of the new exhibit entitled Patterns in Bloom, an Orchid Exhibition. In addition to more than 2,000 orchids that are on display, Molly has created and contributed a wide range of orchid-inspired sculptures. During the program, we'll learn more about how this year's orchid display came about. And Molly will be informing us about her very creative and engaging artwork. Let's start by meeting Lea and Molly and then hearing all about Patterns in Bloom, an orchid exhibition, which will be on view until March 17th. Welcome. So delighted you're both able to be here.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you. It's great to be here.
Last Saturday, I had the wonderful opportunity, together with hundreds of other people, to visit the exhibition, eager to hear more about it and have you inform viewers. But before we jump right to that, I think it would also be of interest to just very briefly hear a little bit about each of your backgrounds, professional, artistic interests, perhaps current positions. Lea, would you please start?
Sure, yes. So, as you said, I'm the manager of exhibitions here at the Botanic Garden. I've been here for 2.5 years. Before that, I studied plant biology and studio art, and I worked at the Museum of Science for 15 years. I ran the butterfly garden, and I've always had a passion for combining art and nature, especially in a way that brings people joy. And the Botanic Garden is a really wonderful way of doing that. I can bring in artists and creative partners like Molly and show off our beautiful location that we have here.
Oh, it's a treat to visit on any occasion for sure. Molly, welcome. A little bit about yourself, please.
Yes, thank you. And as you said, I'm an artist. I work primarily with sculpture and installation, as you'll see at New England Botanic Garden. And I also have an interest with bringing ecosystems and nature and joy all together with art. So this collaboration with New England Botanic Garden has been a dream come true and just very exciting.
Oh no, finding out a little bit about your background, you two are made for each other and you can
Very
see
true.
in the exhibition how well you complement each other and get inspiration from each other, which we'll hear much more about shortly. Lea, a little bit of background of how this year's display of orchids came about, Patterns in Bloom. What was inspiration, the goals, the hopes of you and other staff members?
Yeah, so every year we have an orchid exhibition, which is a crowd favorite. We like to bring it back every year with a new twist, new orchids, a new theme, and new creative partner. So last year, at the conclusion of our orchid exhibition, we as a team, our horticultural department and our education department, marketing, we wanted to think of what we could do next year, because every year we're like, oh man, we got to top this one. And patterns was the theme that kind of came out in our creative process. And in the past, we had worked with Molly, I think it was 2001, just before I started, and everybody raved about her. And as soon as I checked out her work, we really need to work with Molly again. So we contacted her and told her about our theme idea, and we clicked instantly. And we knew it was a really, really positive experience right from the beginning. So
Most
um,
definitely.
Yeah, it really was. And we gave her the theme and she kind of took it from there. And we've been working together since the summer on bringing together what it's going to look like and the layout. And it just come together really well.
Where do all the orchids come from?
That's a great question. They come from growers from Hawaii and from Canada. So they're sustainably sourced from growers who grow them in their greenhouses and they send them to us for our orchid exhibition.
And a little bit before we hear from Molly and her process, what's some of the logistics and process at your end involved in creating such a display as this?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So as I said, we work together with our horticultural department. So we kind of plan out the structures we want to build to showcase the orchids. So this year we had some really interesting, we call them wavy walls, and they're something that we bought for hanging horticultural pots, but we repurposed them to be a base for hanging the orchids. So we had to spend some time designing how the orchids would be held onto the structure. We also built another larger wall that we have in each conservatory. So it's a little bit of engineering, deciding, figuring out
Mhm.
how this is going to work and how we're going to make it look really beautiful. So on the orchid end, we work with our horticulture department, and then over time, Molly and I have been working together to figure how are we going to display the artwork, and a lot of the logistics for hanging we did on site. So once they were here, we figured out what the best way of displaying it would be. And she had such amazing pieces that we had a wonderful time installing them and figuring out just the right place for them. So a lot of little logistics here and there over time, lots of planning, but we have a great team to work with.
For those who haven't had the chance to visit yet, would you please provide us with just a general overview of the layout of
Yeah.
the whole exhibition, please?
Sure. So when you come to the garden, we have two conservatories that house our tropical plants during the winter months. And so when you come in, you'll enter the lobby, and we have one conservatory filled with the orchids and Molly's work. And then we also have our gallery space that connects the two conservatories. And in this space, we have some interpretation talking about orchids and a little bit of their background and patterns. We also displayed more of Molly's work here. And then the second conservatory called the Orangery, another beautifully filled space with orchids and complementing Molly's work.
Terrific, terrific. Molly, how did you first approach this type of collaboration? I can definitely see the match was made to be, but what was your initial thoughts or process that you went through, or the inspiration that you took from the orchids?
That is such a good question because, and great observation. I was so excited when Leah initially reached out to me about this opportunity and collaboration. And I immediately wanted to visit the spaces and just see them because like Leah said, I did an installation for Wild Hideaways, which was back in 2021. Time is just so fast now. um, and that was outside. So I really wanted a chance to come back and visit the spaces that I would be installing in this time. And so there are some logistical things to figure out with just how to exhibit artwork in a space like that, where while they're conservatories for plants, for artwork, they actually are the opposite approach of what you'd consider in a traditional conservation effort, with humidity and the plants being watered every day in the floor. There's lots of water being you know watered around, and and it was crucial for me to think about that. And it was crucial for me to also think in terms of um, we speak of the orchids highlighting my work, and it's funny because I really came into this with the approach that was, the orchids and the plants in the space are my collaborators, and the humans are my observers. So I have to really take that into consideration with the design, and really honor the orchids and the plants in a way that's celebrating them in their own right, and that I wouldn't be competing because as you said before, orchids are just, they're crowd pleasers, they're gorgeous, and the diversity that New
Mm.
England Botanic Garden was able to bring in, all the different kinds of orchids, that was really important to me to highlight too. So when I initially went to research and tried to pull, knowing the theme that it was patterns in bloom, and I was looking through books and just books and books and pictures, and I got really overwhelmed because there are thousands and thousands of different types of orchids. I think at this point we're up to 28,000 different known kinds. Leah can check me on that, but I was overwhelmed, and so I had to zoom out because I was seeing polka dots and I was seeing lines, and um, but I knew there was something that connected all of them, even though they all looked so different. And so when I zoomed out, I started to see that each orchid had a very distinct personality and a very interesting face. Not to anthropomorphize them, but they were very distinct personalities, and so that was my moment of, oh, that's the connection I see between the orchids and the humans that are going to be visiting the spaces. So to me, that was my inspiration to scale up the work and to bridge that gap between the smaller orchids and the larger humans, as a way to bring them together in a joyful and celebratory way, but also each 60, well, let's see, each sculpture, there's 61 sculptures that make up this installation, and each one is unique. So
Mm.
the diversity part was really a driving force, and this is inspiration, because even with the limited palette I was working with, I still was able to make each one different from the next, which was coming directly from the orchids.
That's fabulous. That's fabulous. Could you share a little bit about the process, maybe in general, that you take to your work, but also for sure this exhibition? What were some of your considerations from beginning to end in creating these wonderful sculptures?
Sure, yes. The process, um, it is it's a long one. When I take, so I start with single-use plastic bags, or what are labeled as single-use plastic bags. I think at this point, everyone who's seen the exhibition knows they're not single-use. But they start as a bag, and I take them and cut and fold into a thickness that works for the next step, which is putting pressure and heat on the plastic, which turns it into this tarp-like material that then I can sew. I can put a welded frame through it in that way, which is how the image, you can see the petals on the sculptures are curving, and that's how that happens. And it all started, this process, it seems very silly, when I think about it, but it started with a similar logistical problem when I was about 12 years old, and I wanted a messenger bag, well, for cycling, that would repel water. And having been raised by teachers, I was taught to use what is around me. And so I looked and I saw garbage bags and knew that they were used to repel water so that it didn't leak out or anything like that. And thanks to my grandma and her iron, and many other things that I used for crafting purposes that are now labeled very largely craft iron or craft scissors, I was able to experiment and figure out this process that eventually led to a cycling bag. It worked. So when I was approached with this installation and similar logistic problems where it needed to repel water, it needed to be able to withstand a lot of sun and humidity, I thought about this material again because it is so durable and it does last forever. So sculpting with it seemed very sustainable, and ultimately giving a very bright, joyful, interesting material that really stands out from other traditional materials.
How has your interest in using the so-called single-use plastics come about?
So that's something, again, being raised by non-artists, I'll call them. Everyone's an artist, and so I feel silly saying that, but they weren't professional artists, and um, I was always taught to foster my creativity, but use what's around me, not just to go buy a bunch of things. And so, from the very beginning, with my interest in sculpture and installation, I was drawn to use mass produced, discarded, or somewhere in between, um, but always like smaller material that could then be used in repetition and build up to create a larger installation or sculpture that then morphs the material and transforms it in a way where it's not obvious anymore. And that's just something that I've been interested in from the very beginning when I was a kid. And it has just carried on through my practice as an adult now. And uh, it it's great because it really remains a challenge every time I go from square one with an installation or sculpture. And I really have to think of how to use a material, what the best material is, and um, different playful approaches of getting that material to where I want it to be. So it's always an adventure with repurposing things.
Building on that, just a few more words of what you mentioned in your introduction, just a
Mhm.
little bit about the role and value of ecosystems and how they play into your work.
Oh, great question. Yeah, ecosystems. They're everything in my work because I look at an organism like an orchid or lichen or a horseshoe crab, just to name a few of the organisms I've looked at in my work, and um, it always starts with a bit of research and finding out origin stories or where things are from or how they're connected to something else, and that always ends up in about 100 different rabbit holes, which always bring me to the same conclusion, which is everything is connected to everything else. And in my work, that's the celebration of, wow, we are all connected, and look at this, look at how this is connected to this. And even the material use that I'm using, plastic bags, um, there's a lot that I learned about plastic bags and where they come from and how we're connected in ways that I never thought. I've learned so much about different materials and organisms, and it's just, I think that education piece, because I actually am an adjunct professor as well, teaching different studio art classes. And as I mentioned before, having been raised by teachers, I think that educational piece is also very important in my practice. Um, and yeah, there's always something to learn with ecosystems. There's never a dull moment.
That's for sure. You know, Before we move on, we're fortunate to have this shot here of you assembling, but also a short clip we're going to see of you doing some initial planning and designing. Um, as we move on to it, feel free to add any commentary as we enjoy this little snippet of you at work here.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, there's lots of fast clips, so it might be catching up here. But there's a lot of repetition. So you can see there's all these different colors changing, but the sewing, the tracing, the cutting, it's all very much a part of the process.
Now, from the beginning to end, are you ever surprised with or often surprised with the final product from your initial thinking?
Always surprised. That's something that I've learned to um, just embrace as part of the process. When I first started, when I was in high school, would have an image in my head, and I would get so frustrated if I couldn't match the image in my head to what was in front of me. And I think it was really understanding that I'm not using traditional materials. There really isn't a manual you can pick up at the library, or a YouTube video you can find that says how to hang giant sculptural flowers that were inspired by orchids but made from plastic bags in a ceiling. And so those things have led to me just rolling with it, but in a way that always leads to wonderful surprises and collaborations, like with Lea. Just this whole installation, it could have been a month-long performance. It was just incredible, and the amount of footage I've gotten from it, and I'm sure people watching too. It was, whether it was a giant flopping flower walking through the conservatories with human legs behind it, or the flowers being lifted into space, and figuring out, as Lea and I started to call the term, the physics of a flower flop. Things just kept getting sillier and in the best way possible, that led to just, I think the love and the silliness comes out when people see it, or at least I hope so. And that's part of that improv that I think it's crucial for installation. It's the best.
I think just that whole playfulness comes through in your work, and hearing you talk about your work, and I think it opens up many other possibilities that you haven't limited for final designs and installations like we have here. Lea, as far as the installation process of the sculptures, or perhaps even the orchids, what were some of the challenges in putting everything together?
Oh, so one, it was so much fun. We got to spend a lot of time together, figuring out exactly where everything's going to go. And as you can see from this picture, this is the top of the conservatory, and we have some trusses. So it's not just a wall that you're going to hang something on. We really wanted to make something that was changing as you walk through, and as Molly said, very playful. And I feel like we really accomplished it here. So when you walk in, you get one view, and you walk underneath, the flowers are kind of facing you in different directions. So your experience changes as you walk through it. And I think that was the important part of this installation, was having an experience, and that it was fun and it was joyful and colorful. And yeah, I think we did a great job getting this accomplished. And it was so much fun working with Molly. And you could see some of the smaller pieces. They're on, we call our orchid columns. So the plants are already in place, and we were able to put these into place and really let the whole piece kind of come together. So it's really a fun way of combining the two. So you can see the orchids here combined with one of Molly's sculptures. It's really just, they play off each other and complement each other in a really like playful way.
Incredibly well. And the vibrant colors are just so appealing.
Yeah.
Fabulous. And here we see another wonderful wider shot of a number of the orchids, together with a good sampling of Molly's sculptures as well. And just a little slice of the many viewers who already in less than a week have made their way to Tower Hill to enjoy the exhibition. What's been some of the reaction and feedback from viewers so far, visitors, Lea or Molly, that you've heard or observed?
Oh, we've seen so many smiles. Was here Saturday for the opening, and so many people are just, as you said, they right away people were there waiting to come in, and just people really enjoying it, looking up, looking all around, taking close-up pictures of the orchids, but also getting the whole installation. And I think people have been really responding well and loving it, and seeing people smile on in the winter is wonderful, especially when you may or may not get a snowstorm.
And you can see here by this one, just appealing to wide range of ages,
Yeah.
incredible demographics on display as well. And I saw this was a popular shot. getting selfies of yourselves in the
Mhm.
exhibition itself.
Yeah, we always see this exhibit as something that you can bring a friend, bring a family member, come on your own. But it is really wonderful to see, two friends here, sisters, and taking that selfie together and, showing Molly's art behind it. Just having those moments, I think is, sparking joy and creating those moments is a really wonderful part of this exhibit.
Lea, what's been some of the other already and upcoming related programming connected to the exhibition?
Yeah, so we have our Orchids After Dark, which unfortunately is already sold out, but it's a nighttime event where we bring in lights and some music and food, and it's a very popular event. Next year we'll be doing it again with more dates. So this year it's already sold out, but we're really excited about it. We also have our school vacation week coming up. I do believe that's next week. There'll be some orchid themed programming that will be going along with that as well. And we always have many classes and programs that are related to everything we have going on. So you check out the website. I'm sure there's a great list of programs coming up.
Terrific. Molly, how can viewers and others find out more about your work?
Sure, yes. Similar to New England Botanic Garden, I also have a website, mollygambardella.com. And if anyone's on Instagram or Facebook, I'm also on those platforms. And again, just my name, Molly Gambardella. And there's lots of different photos and videos and behind the scenes that you'll see on social media that you won't necessarily see on the website, which is always fun. And my email is right on my website if anyone wants to reach out or has any questions.
Fabulous, fabulous. Leah, in the 2 minutes or so that we have left, what other current or upcoming exhibitions, programs, and events would you like to inform us about?
Sure. Yes. So right now we're celebrating Black History Month with our Black Horticultural Heroes exhibition. It's in our lobby right now. And we're celebrating some of our innovators, scientists, and farmers who contributed to horticultural. And then we also have for Women's History Month, we'll be bringing a subset of our horticultural heroes out again to celebrate Women's History Month. And then come back in the spring because spring will be our blooms will be coming out. It's going to be a great time to come visit the garden.
Terrific, terrific. Right. It doesn't matter what time of year, there's always something very appealing and inspirational about visiting the gardens for sure.
Yeah.
Well, unfortunately, we've come to the end of the program. I want to thank both of you very much again for taking the time to be here. Congratulations on this collaboration, the fabulous
you.
exhibition, Patents in Bloom, and encourage people to make their way to Tower Hill by March 17th to enjoy the fabulous display.
Thanks, Jay.
Thank you so much.
A pleasure. Also want to thank those of you watching us for joining and hope you'll be able to tune in next time.